All right, I'd like to call the Policy Review Committee meeting to order. It is 3:33 on June 24th, and we have Ms. Felton with us today and Mr. Bowensteel. Do I have a motion to adopt the minutes from the April 22nd, 2026 meeting?
So move.
Moved by Ms. Felton. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Bowensteel. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the meeting minutes for April 22nd are approved. Do I have a motion to adopt the moved by Ms. Felton,
Second.
second by Mr. Bowensteel. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And the special meeting minutes, May 14th, are now adopted. Do I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
So move.
Motion to adopt the agenda and seconded. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? And we have an agenda.
I'm gonna grab my packet.
Okay, yes. Let's wait just a minute for Mr.
So
Bowensteel.
still.
All right, Ms. Linetti or LB, we'll start with bylaw 132.
Just had to press harder, sorry. 132 is one of our bylaws. This is actually a fairly simple change. Under section B, the only thing we're changing is, it says, when policy revisions are submitted to the school board for consideration, the draft presented shall show previous policy language proposed to be eliminated by strikeouts and propose new language by red letter. It used to say underlining. We're doing red lettering because if you're familiar with the WCAG requirements and website accessibility, you cannot use underlining for things other than things that link to a website or another electronic link. So you've been seeing that. We've been doing that in our policies. It's just redlining. So we just want to make it clear that that's why we're doing it. It's a website accessibility. So that's our only change for this one, to keep us in compliance with our current practices.
So is that example like maybe hot linking?
Correct. So underline should only be used now. So what we used to use to distinguish section other areas, we're not using underlines. We're not doing breaks anymore. So we're doing red lettering. So you will see the red lettering, but we just can't underline it any longer and be compliant with our website accessibility requirements.
All right, so the only change we see there is under B, format and presentation. Yeah, right there. Red lettering. Okay, any other concerns or comments?
I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. All right, so do we have a motion to adopt this as presented?
Motion.
Motion made by Mr. Bowensteel,
Second.
seconded by Ms. Felton. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right. Bylaw 132 adoption and the amendment, repeal, and suspension of policies will move forward. All right, policy 330, purchasing of goods and services.
We have our procurement officers here today. Procurement has been going through a lot of updating and changing procedures on contracting. And they, after looking at this policy, they wanted to reflect the current practices they have. And so there are significant changes to section B about the role of the procurement officer. So the first is one, the director of procurement shall serve as a purchasing agent for the school division and shall be responsible for the administration and oversight of procurement activities conducted on behalf of the school board in accordance with applicable law, school board policy, regulations, and established procedure. Two, the Office of Procurement Service will serve as the centralized procurement authority for the school division and shall administer and oversee the procurement process for all procurements conducted on behalf of the school board, including those related to capital improvement projects and alternative project delivery methods authorized by law. This is actually significant. You'll see the line we pulled out later on the policy. We had split the responsibilities. We've moved them back together to centralize it and get more consistency on that. And I'm sure the procurement department can talk to you about that. So three, the director of procurement may designate procurement services staff to administer specific procurements and provide procurement guidance and compliance oversight and support to the school division. And four, for capital improvement projects and other facilities-related procurements, the Office of Facility Services shall retain responsibility for project planning, technical specifications, scope development, budget coordination, project management, and contract administration, subject to the applicable procurement requirements and procurement governance by the Office of Procurement Services. Then we would strike out the line, the Director of Procurement shall serve as the purchasing agent for the school division for everything except capital improvement CIP construction projects. This is actually a pretty big change for us, and what you've been seeing us do with the Princess Anne and high school CIP project, where we're working on the design build, that's a really good example of where procurement has worked very closely with facilities as we're developing these procedures on how we're going to manage the procurement issues. And so we just thought it made more sense, we, the department, and thought it made more sense to now have our director of procurement overseeing all the procurement procedures, make sure we're consistent. So we're bringing the capital improvement program, facilities programs back under procurement, but facilities will still continue to have some role on it. So it is a significant change for us, but we have been doing this for a few months now and gotten used to it. And I don't know if anybody from procurement or the CFO wants to speak to this.
Yes.
Thank you, Ms. Pate.
Thank you. I think Cammie pretty much covered it all. So basically, back in the day when Tony Arnold was here, a lot of the procurement for facilities was taken care of under facility services and really wasn't flowing through the procurement area. And what we've decided is best after Mr. Arnold left was that we probably needed to have procurement more involved in the process to make sure we had consistency and transparency and that there were certain regulations and rules that were followed and they were across the board. And so especially when you start talking about I think last night I reported where we were going to have grants for school construction. So then you start getting into different areas in grants where you have to follow specific regulations that are probably outside of procurement within the operating budget. So we just wanted to have that procurement eye on these facility agreements as they go forward. And to make sure that templates are similar, we just have at certain phases that someone with that procurement expertise is able to review those documents.
I will say, working with them, this seems to be very productive, particularly when we were doing the design build and construction management policy. We sat down, we had seminars together, we were working on, we brought in experts. It's really kind of neat to see the coordination of this and making sure everybody's up to date and following the rules. Melissa, Ms. Ingram's here, she can also direct that. I think it's kind of what you've seen in the last couple of years is a redoing the procurement processes, working on the contracting. It's been a transparency, making sure everybody's following the laws. It's really an interesting thing to see us happening. And Ms. Ingram, of course, has had responsibility for this, but she can also speak to the coordination between the two departments.
Yeah, and thank you. And as Ms. Linetti and Ms. Pate had said, so the coordination has been very important for us, especially as we're having more complicated projects with grants and things like that. We do have the subject matter expertise as well as our consultants who are design teams of records or engineers of records and things like that, where we help to work on that part of the facility aspect of these contracts, and then procurement's looking at the procurement law, VPPA laws with us in conjunction, and it's been a very good coordinated effort for us to get things moving, and still doing good work together and making sure that we are in alignment with our policies and regulations as well.
So this was amended just in 2025, but it came back because of the design build and because of the procurement law changes. Is that why it came back before?
So one of the
So
reasons
you-
is the design build language that we put in there. And there's many aspects over the years, over the last 20 years that, when we have an RFQ or an RFP, we always have procurement at our hip. It's a matter of, our projects that are more standardized, where we're going through legal, and we're now just including procurement in it too. And it's just been helpful, I think, division-wide to make sure that that we have all offices involved and just doing a final check. We have risk management involved for certificates of insurance. We have, again, legal involved for contract matters, and now we just are adding procurement as a function to this as well.
And I notice your internal auditor's here too. She also sits in on a lot of the monitoring. And so some of the concerns that the school board's been having about contracting and issues for the last 4 or 5 years, the Department of Finance has done a lot of work in this area to correcting contracting, and of course we brought in audit to help monitor what's going on. So it's kind of a neat collaboration to see it finally coming to that. But it also occurred to us, we need to clear up this policy that it's not just the Department of Facilities handling procurement on construction matters. It is being monitored by the procurement services also.
Okay, do we have any comments or suggestions or desired changes from what you see here,
I
my
have
colleagues?
just one quick question, just to understand. I understand the reason and the why. So will this turn into be a new position, or will it roll over into an existing program that existing position that we have?
So currently, we've had some internal discussions about how that's gonna work and how this is gonna go hand in hand. Procurement staff have taken some courses on construction procurement, cause it is a little bit different than it is for regular procurement. We don't really necessarily have that expertise. We right now currently have a consultant that was brought in for the design build. It's been very helpful in the RFQ for Princess Anne. So they've been trying to learn a lot from them. There is talk, but we don't know the answer to this, about the level of work that's going to be transferred to procurement. And that's what we're trying to see, whether any additional staffing, if it would be anything, it would be one additional staff that may be needed in procurement that would have a constructional expertise in that area. But I think we're trying to take those steps and make sure that we look at everything and make sure that whether we can develop that expertise in-house or whether we need to actually hire someone and bring them on board.
Okay. It sounds a bit involving in what we're doing, how we're doing it. So my question is, don't want to overburden one person, but it would be interesting to see how you move forward with that. Would be know how that position goes, or how it will roll over into an existing position.
Right,
As well.
and I know we're working with Ms. Ingram's team to make sure that they're trying to get the lay of the land, for lack of a better words, of what procurement activities are occurring in the facility services areas and which ones can transfer, while they, like Ms. Ingram said, that they are the subject matter experts when it comes to the construction side of it. And certainly we're not gonna, as a procurement team, not gonna step in on that, but we do wanna make sure that what they do and the documents they produce for us to actually go into a procurement agreement are gonna be, follow the VPPA and all of the other regulations, and again, if grants are involved, so.
Thank you so much.
Mr. Bowensteel, do you have any? Okay. All right, well, we'll go ahead and take a vote. Do I have a motion to send policy 330, purchasing of goods and services, on to the school board?
So move.
Motion by Ms. Felton.
Second.
Do I, second by Mr. Bowensteel. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Policy 330 will move forward. Next, we have policy 525, student placement.
This one is actually pretty interesting,
Yeah.
pretty simple. If you didn't know, we have a rule on transfer students. Rule on transfer students. Interesting. There's actually a state law on the placement of twins and multiple siblings that if parents want them together, the parents have the right to place them together in schools. That did not require any change on our part. There's a few rules on transfer to secondary schools. The only thing we're actually recommending this is to cite the regulation on transfer students, which is the red line you see down there, and it says the 8 VAC 213260 on there. But if you weren't aware that we had special rules on multiples, we do. They're actually state law on that. So
I
those
know.
are the only recommendations we have.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting too. I didn't realize that either. And this, of course, is again a 5-year review from 2021. Pretty simple. Any concerns or changes or comments or questions, Mr. Bowensteel?
No, that's all right.
It's just interesting in knowing if you had conversation with parents as well, especially when we have triplets that walk across the stage and graduating. We saw that this year with that as well. So this is interesting.
Yeah.
It was when I read
Yeah,
it.
you'd have to talk to Dossel about whether they have ongoing issues with this. So I would have put all three of my
No.
kids into one class.
No, no, no issues.
And I do know of a parent said that she decided to separate her twins because the girl twin was so dominant that she wanted the boy to have more of a voice, so she did break them up in school. So that was interesting. I didn't know that about. Thank you. No concerns. No concerns.
Okay. All right, well, I will take a motion to accept policy 525 and move it on to the school board.
So move on policy 520-25.
Okay, motion made by Ms. Felton, seconded by Mr. Bowensteel. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? All right, 525 moves forward. Thank you.
526 is another 5-year review. This has to do with course load, talks about additional course load, reduced course load. What we are amending is simply to add the regulations from the Virginia Department of Education into here, which would add the one regulation and update the corrected citation for the second referral to the Virginia Standards of Accreditation, but we're not recommending any of the changes.
All right, Mr. Delaney, like, how much, is this used a lot for additional course loads?
What do you mean,
I
the
mean, our
additional course loads component?
Yeah, are students, like, taking advantage of that?
Yeah,
pretty
we have several that
regularly?
are taking advantage of it. Again, going back to graduations.
Right, all that.
When you hear a 5-point something
Yeah.
grade point average,
So this comes in with all those taken, okay.
yeah, they may be taking a Virtual Virginia class in addition, additionally, it might be taking 8 courses and additional online courses as well. So widely, no, but we certainly have students taking advantage of that opportunity.
All right. Okay, and just the reduced course load. So that is not, connected in any way with a homebound teacher or anything. That's just they're gonna take reduced, but still go into the building and take classes, correct?
That's correct.
All right, any, concerns, questions, comments on this policy, 526? All right, do I have a motion to accept 526 and move it on to the school board?
So move on policy 5-26.
Okay, motion by Ms. Felton,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Bowensteel. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, we will move 526 forward. Policy 527.
527 is also a 5-year look, and again, the only real significant changes are going to be in the legal reference on here. But this is a policy that deals with where the rules for promoting a student to the next grade, retention, or accelerating a student who seems to have mastered that class or that grade level work. This is the one where parents call us and they don't want their child ready to go, or they want to decide if the child's retained or promoted. This is the policy that states it is the principal's decision as to how that's going to happen. But there are rules that are set out in here for both promotion and retention on there. Again, the only significant changes we're going to be recommending are in the legal reference to reference the regulation on student achievement and update the reference to the role of the principal in making these decisions in the legal references. I flipped too fast.
Yeah, under C.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry,
middle
under
school.
C,
Under C.
first paragraph. Students in grades 6, 7, and 8 are promoted to the next grade on the basis of earning passing final grades in the core subjects of language arts, mathematics, science, and social studies, and earning a passing final grade in one of the following program areas. So that it's the word earning that we're adding.
Okay, do we have any concerns or questions, comments?
Not at this time. I'm
Policy
looking.
527? All right, I will take a motion to send this forward then.
It just, the
Okay.
legal reference, I'm sorry, Ms.
okay.
Swain. And we are using, I see you're using the Virginia Board of Education Regulation 8V, okay. I see that and that's promising, thank you. No problems. Good.
All right, do I have a motion to accept 527 and moving on forward to the school board?
So move on
Moved by Ms.
527.
Felton, seconded
Second.
by Mr. Bowenstiel. All those, any more discussion? Nope. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, we will send 527 to the full board. Okay, policy 528, reporting student progress.
Again, it's a 5-year check, and under section A, under progress reports, in the first sentence, so just add the word "the." Periodically during the school year, a progress report will be given to the adult student or the parents, legal guardians of a minor student, so it's the "the" out there. I will tell you, Mr. Delaney and I had a discussion earlier today under section B. I had added the language, did you see there, a conference will be held, sorry, the last sentence in the paragraph. A conference will be held with the adult student or the parent's legal guardian of a minor student to address the issues in the warning notice. This paragraph to do with warning notices. Honestly, I approved this a few months ago, so I couldn't remember where I had come up with that language from. We had some discussion today, and Mr. Delaney was concerned that may be putting more burdens on the school division, because if you read the first sentence, in cases where a student is in danger of failing a course or a subject or experiences a significant negative change in performance, sufficient notice shall be sent home to provide warning of the possibility that the student may fail the subject or class. Obviously, failing won't be a big issue, but if a negative change in performance, you went from an A to a B, would that then require a conference? And we had some discussion about maybe this is too much of a burden on the school division for simple things where a child didn't do well on one assignment, all of a sudden that changes the student's grade on there. So after some discussion this afternoon, we decided, since we couldn't find the legal reference for this, that it required us to do this, that we're gonna actually ask to take that sentence back out again and not just leave the paragraph the way it is. Under section C, sorry.
Okay, so,
Yeah.
so colleagues, so B, you were saying take out your red addition, take out that last
Right,
sentence.
and I think we've drafted it to look like that, so we can hand you up a copy of what it would look like if you're
Okay.
agreeable to removing that.
Okay, yeah, let's just stick on B, because I've got a question. What is sufficient notice shall be sent home? I mean, because I know we recently got an email about I think a senior in high school. So what would you say sufficient notice is, time-wise? I mean, what does that mean? I'm not sure.
From our perspective, we have a couple things in place around sufficient notice, whether it's progress reports, whether it's report card. Now, some might say that progress report does not come often enough for sufficient notice. With the advent of parent view, student view, all the other digital elements we have of people to monitor grades, that notice and the ability for parents to monitor those grades has changed drastically over the years. So I think it's a good question, Ms. Weems, of how you interpret sufficient notice, because it does lend itself open to a disagreement on what we believe is sufficient. I believe we've done it through regulations around the concept of our progress reports and other means, and that when teachers see that decrease in academic performance, there are certain processes they should follow, such as a call home, notes home, visitation, not I said visitation, or a conference of that nature. So that's typically how that policy has been written.
So that part though is in regulation, that.
Yeah,
is
we
what you're
have,
saying.
we have a
Yeah.
deeper element in our regulation,
Yeah,
which
can
is
you-
5.282. Give me 1 second.
Yeah, if you could read the regulation, because that, and obviously, it's not just entirely up to the parent to see all this stuff, but there's an act of reaching out to let them know.
Correct. The other
Yeah.
things I'd mention
Yeah.
is things like our student response team process that is required in areas not only just on academic performance, but can be behavioral performance and disciplinary concerns. So we have a pretty robust system to track our students that are having challenges or at-risk issues on a variety of academic levels. So when I look at just gonna pull it up as well? Okay, so I'll wait till it gets pulled
Yeah,
up so
good,
you can
thank
see
you.
it. All right, so if you look at the first part of that regulation, if you can see it, it talks about how they're formally evaluated 4 times a year, and how secondary students, elementary students formally 4 times a year with progress reports and grades. All secondary students in division 4 times on the AB, and then on the 4x4, they do not receive a progress report because that first marking period ends at the same time progress reports go out. We have approved report card processes and then the grading of students around the grading guidelines that we have. You will then see that progress reports that talks about how those are scheduled and the requirements within the IEP. So anytime progress reports go out to students, if there's a decrease in IEP with the students with disabilities, there has to be a progress meeting held around the IEP component. If you flip to the backside, I'm flipping to the backside. If you scroll down right before C, if you'll hold right there for me. So if you look right above C, it says teachers are encouraged to use various informal means of reporting student progress, including conferences, telephone calls, notes, and school visitations. You'll see often on the elementary school setting, for example, the use of Seesaw allows for a lot of those personal messages to go back and forth from parents. So I would say that we have a much more robust communication process between parents and schools than we previously had because of those many means of that being reported. So going back to your questions on sufficient notice, I think much of that would have to come when the concern comes forward at the building level is what is the communication that's taken place amongst the teacher and the parent or the family, which is what we often discuss when that concern elevates beyond the teacher to the principal to monitor what those communication processes look like. And in my conversation with Ms. Linetti today, my statement was that area is broader. So when you added that language of mandating a conference being held, that language was very tight to more of a broader statement above, which to me is not inconsistent with what we see with policy often is more of the broader, and then the regulation gets down in the details of what that looks like.
Right.
And the other thing, as the policy now is back up on the screen, the other component, and I don't want to jump on, so I'll pass it back to Ms. Linetti unless there's more questions, then talks about conferencing when you go to C and beyond.
I do. In your explanation, Mr. Delaney, you did bring up a lot of questions, especially number one, student response team. That particular entity is in all of our schools.
That is correct.
Okay. And I've seen the function of most of them, not all of them, but what I've seen is very impressive, and how they move throughout the school and with the students that we may have in the back. And it's not as traditional as you're seeing with the sending home a note. They are doing more interaction and engaging with the student than sending home a note, which I find is more.
It's a very formal process, and I apologize for interrupting, but it gives me an opportunity to talk about things that people may hear in a different forum. So when you hear MTSS and our strategic action agenda and Mr. Jameson speaking on that model, it's been a huge, had a very positive impact on our ability to provide those services for students. Because in the past, teachers had to fill more paperwork out, and that paperwork, now it's very streamlined through a digital process. So our reading plans, for example, get uploaded within MTSS, and we're investigating how now to develop math plans for our elementary students. So it allows for that to be tracked a lot more, in a lot more efficient way as a student progresses from grade level to grade level, and now from elementary to middle. So when we look at how we're reviewing student progress, that's a prime example of how the student response team process does that.
I have no qualms with the student response team. Like I said, I'm very impressed. It was impressive how they tracked the student from middle up to high school, and how they looked at the grades and the students, not only their physical existence, but their mental existence and what was happening with them. It is a really good progress system that we're using, and I hope we become more robust because it really works. So how a student level was below grade level, and them tracking him and keeping him in line brought him up to graduation time. He was ready to graduate. So I like that one-on-one. It was really good. But the question you brought up about seesaw in elementary school, how that would track the students and the parents would use that. They would use it. So, but now that we put forth that policy, that
Parents still have access.
to that seesaw.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right. Just want to make sure that was there. We've been seeing not a lot, but just one is sometimes too much for me. Parents saying they're not getting the information, or they're not receiving it, or they don't understand it. Are we working on that communication gap with especially with the IEPs, especially with, some of the parents that come to speak to us? Can you hit on that? Can you explain that? I know Mr. Brower went out and talked with the parent, but what is happening with that communication?
I would probably gently push back that we are much better at our communication than we've ever been in terms of access to how your student is progressing. There's always kind of that partnership component that I think can always get better in how we navigate that with our students that might be struggling. Are we inviting the parent in a manner that shares that level of our concern for their students' progress and their ability to solve that problem together? But with 63,000 students, we're going to have several opportunities when our parents aren't pleased with the communication. I would say that those are pretty rare when you look at the numbers of the potential of those concerns. And that what I appreciate is when the concerns come to the board or come to us here, that we then continue to not just say, well, it's wash our hands of it, let's go back and investigate. Has the principal been involved? Let's talk about what's the school counselor's involvement been. How do we solve the concern in a manner that truly addresses it? And I think we do a pretty good job of that, Ms. Felton, but I do agree every situation does require us to reevaluate that communication process.
And so with that said, and I'm going to let it go, it's always important to me about how students progressing. So knowing what you know there about that communication piece, and knowing that we do have the student response team in place, are we looking for future expansion with that, or is it other things coming to make it look better, more robust?
Yeah, from an expansion standpoint, not necessarily from the human resources side, but how we're better utilizing that MTSS module is one. And then the other thing, as you were speaking, Ms. Felton, is sometimes often our parents don't know how to use those digital resources. And I think at the retreat, you're going to see good examples, or over time, how we're trying to effectively communicate that to families. Where can they find the access that helps them get there? So oftentimes at a open house, we'll have stations at schools where here's how you can log into Parent View. Here's some other applications that are available for you. So that's always, how they can better access that information, I think, is because, as you know, it changes so quickly that a parent goes, I didn't even recognize I could use the Zoom app to track the bus or other things like that. So that's something that is continually on our radar, and I know we talked about it just in senior staff the other day of some things that we're working on that provides that level of kind of streamlining for families.
That you're bringing it back for an update, it seems like we are trying to, or we're moving toward meeting parents where they are. And like you said, everyday technology change, what things we can get to and what we can access. So thank you. I have no more questions. Thank you, Ms. Williams.
Do you have anything in this policy?
No.
Just a quick question too, kind of with the programs that we have to make sure that no one's like shocked, but we have the graduation coaches. So they are constantly keeping up with everybody. And if someone has fallen through the cracks, they are reaching out, correct?
Well, I tell people all the time, I think it was 6-7 years ago, we had a 91% on-time graduation rate. We're now right a little bit above 97%. And main reason for that is every high school has meetings on a very consistent basis about students that are in danger of not graduating. And there's a high school that does it weekly. And well, I'll let you call them out. I'd be careful some other high schools don't go, well, you didn't call us out.
I know that because they let me in on one of their meetings, and I was so impressed about how everybody at the table knew all these students and what they needed and all.
And then, so not only the grad coach, but there's situations, does the social worker need to get involved? Has the school counselor done these things? How are we engage the parents as it gets to a certain level? So that's why I come back to the.
Interesting too, that they left it, go find that one. So I'm imposed or go find that one. So I'm imposed or they're in
9, is there other ways to use that resource? So we're always evaluating.
graduation
Absolutely,
coaches.
they do. Yes.
They really do, can spit.
Yep.
And some of those had literally walked out.
Okay, so we're okay with sufficient notice and taking out the, sentence that Kimmy had added in, we're now taking it out. And then under D, just the change.
Miss Weems, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but can you turn on your mic, please? Thank you.
Okay, and so we're good with sufficient notice and taking out the red sentence in B.
And there are a few more minor
Right, yeah, there's a couple.
changes, but nothing
Yeah, there's a couple
significant.
Ds in C, and then in D, high school senior instead of just senior and the word the. So, any more discussion? Are we okay for that one?
I'm fine.
All right, do we have a motion to send 528 as presented onto the school board?
I believe I'm ready to send it to the school board so their eyes can rest on it.
Okay. Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, motion by Ms. Felton, second by Mr. Bowenstill. Any more discussion? All right, to send 528 onto the full board, ayes, vote yes. All those in favor
Aye.
Aye.
and all those opposed? All right. Okay, other business, policy 432, this is also a 5-year review. 5-year, well, a 5-year,
May I add something?
yes.
That's way.
Yeah, okay.
More than-
432, let's, in the back here.
Yeah, I do have a question on why this is in other business. And also, I noticed that this should have been brought up in February, so technically, are we in compliance with this?
The SOQ requires that you do a 5-year look. The reason we were holding this particular policy is because the General Assembly had a bill, HB 138, having to do with employee association officers or presidents when they take leave. And if you look in section D, additional services under 1, we have a paragraph about this, which says, with prior approval, the superintendent designee and employee association member may take leave to conduct employee association business, provide the employee association reimburses the school division for actual expenses for required substitutes for members approved by the association leave. The policy that the General Assembly put in has changed this. We actually have another policy, 148, that we adopted in 2024 that deals with this. So we needed to pull this out, but we needed to make sure we knew what the new General Assembly language was. We were also, if you take a look at under D1, which has employee association dues and how you can pull them out, we were watching the bills that were going back and forth on collective bargaining, and we weren't sure what was going to happen with them, so we thought we would just wait. And of course, with the General Assembly running late this year, and you can get significant changes put into the budget bill, we needed to wait till that came through before we made the changes. So we will be bringing this through because we will have to take out the section having to do with D1 because and we will have to amend 148 to reflect the new language and new procedures that are going to be brought in for leave for employee association officers, and we've met on that already, so that'll be coming the next time the PRC meets. The dues, we actually have, and you'll see another policy on dues. I'm not really sure why we had it in here, but that's in this section also. There were no, with the final bills that came out of the General Assembly, where nothing actually changed the employee deductions for employee associations, so that didn't end up changing. And collective bargaining has obviously been put off for a little bit longer, so that may be affected later, but we will be able to go on and make the changes here. So we had not looked at the rest of this policy because we just held the whole thing off till we were sure what the General Assembly was going to do with this.
Okay, yeah, so to clarify, this was 5 years, and upon legal advice, we did not bring it forth in February because we were waiting on those, the collective bargaining and some other laws. And so now we're looking at it, but it has not been through the staff process.
that's what I want to
So,
say.
so we will have to do that, but, I know there's been false accusations that that I just add things willy-nilly, and that it's not what the case is, and this is followed process, and it was a 5-year review, but our legal, counsel said to hold on for it until we got some further information, and that's what we did. So at this point, I mean, it does, have to be sent back and gone through staff, but does anybody, Cammie, I would think that it would be wise for us to go ahead and discuss anything that we have now. Or-
Yeah, if you have concerns about the rest of it, we've not looked at that section
Right.
on
So
there.
we'll just kind of be
And
out
I-
of discussion.
If I'm correct, I think Laura Beth, what's interesting about this one is it cites to, and that's, if you're in the policy on the website, you can click on the 1999 resolution authorizing the superintendent to enforce this. I believe did we run copies of it for you in case if you've never gone on, it's older law. There was a time under, when Dan Edwards was chair, and I do remember times when he would pull this out and say whatever association he thought was violating it, he would direct the superintendent to make sure they were enforcing it. So that's why we've linked it here, is that's why the superintendent's authorized, because obviously if we had to wait for the school board, to meet every 2 weeks and there was a violation of the policy, it wouldn't work. So that's an interesting part about this policy. It's like backs to an old authorization from 1999. And I believe you have a copy of that in your package.
Do we have a copy of that?
Yep. That's it.
What is that?
This,
Yeah, if you're in the policy itself, there's a notice that you can click on and it'll take you to this under the editor's
yeah,
note.
I didn't get a copy, please. Sharon, do you need a copy?
I need a copy as
Yeah,
well, thank you.
yeah, thank you.
So what she's getting at, Attorney Linetti, did I understand you to say under D, additional services number 1, that has to be re-examined or?
Correct. There's been a change in the law on this procedure,
Okay.
and it's actually probably the first time the law has actually dealt with this. The new procedure, it requires the school board to adopt a policy. Now, you happen to have a policy that we adopted in 2024 about this, but there's some different procedures to it now. The school board has to adopt a policy, then the school board has to approve, and it's not just on a local level. You will have to approve leave for someone who is serving as a state level executive officer in an employee association, and up to 2 employees can be approved to do leave at the local level officers. And they will then have to be put on unpaid educational leave, and they made a change to the VRS regulations will allow them to then get credible compensation. We have been working with VRS over the years. It's a procedure we've had in place, but it's the first time it's been adopted into the law. So we are going to have to get our current policy up and compliant with that, and then follow the procedure for it. Again, those are procedures we've been using for a long time, but they've never been incorporated into the law, so we just have to amend our policy.
Okay, and I see what you're reading, I hear under employee, on the first page, B, the definition of employee association definition. I wonder if should there be more explanation of employee association defined as an organization comprised of and organized by only employees or retirees?
Yeah, this was a
Do we have
policy.
examples of that?
Well, I can tell it. I can tell you how this came up a number of years ago. I'm going to say it was 2018. At that time, I believe it's Mrs. Anderson brought it up. She had a concern because there were other organizations that were being organized that had a combination of both teachers and citizens, non-teachers on them. She was concerned about how we were going to recognize some of these groups. So there was a lot of work done on that particular section. This is the definition they came up with, and so it does limit it to they have to be organized by employees or retirees of Virginia Beach City Public Schools. So that was a 2018 decision the school board made.
But they gave no really criteria or examples of those particular associations, right? But
They
had to
didn't
be-
list any particular ones. They were aware of a group that had organized here that included more than teachers or educators in it, and that's what they were concerned about.
So they wanted to make sure that that group was excluded. I mean,
Correct.
that's what, okay. I had a quick question. May I pick you up? Okay, so it can't have students.
Not by this
To this
definition,
definition.
unless the students are also working for us in some capacity, which technically could happen.
Only employees or retired. So what are some examples of, I mean, I know there's no list, but what are some of our employee associations?
I believe we have a bus driver one.
Okay, bus
and
driver.
I know we had one a couple of years ago. I don't know how active they are, so I'm not aware of the other groups.
Well, the VBEA, right?
The
And the
BBA,
bus
correct,
driver.
is one.
With the principal ones, or is that
We
something
have,
else?
we have the Virginia Beach Association for Secondary School Principals, VBA SSP, and then we have Virginia Beach Education for Elementary, Association for Elementary School Principals, VBA ESP. And then we have the VBEA, which also includes all of our staff, bus drivers and all. The bus association that Ms. Linetti indicated, it's kind of been, it's just kind of collapsed by nature of retirees and no one stepping forward to take over the group, but they do have the opportunity to join through the Education Association, VBEA, if they choose to do so. And those currently are the only three employee organizations that also do payroll deductions automatically as an employee group as well.
Okay, so
And that was part of the school board meeting last night,
Right.
where you were voting on payroll deductions presented by Ms. Pate.
Right. So it's the elementary principals, the secondary, and then the VBEA.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
What you wouldn't see would be like a statewide or a national organization that involved employees outside of Virginia Beach. This would not, you don't currently recognize them as an employee association.
Okay. Questions, Mr. Bernstein?
Yes, I could be wrong, I'm not sure, but I believe that we don't have anything to do basically with unions.
Not at this time, obviously, if collective
Because-
bargaining comes in, we might.
The one of the association you're talking about is now claiming that they're a union.
I don't know that we look at the names of the organization on that.
I mean, they have flyers that says local union, and that's different than an association, correct?
Correct, and I don't know that you have any further definition if they, I believe the name, the only one that I know they've all say association on it, but I don't know that we look at the legal status of any of these organizations.
I mean, would that be something that, well, I mean, you bring up a good point. I mean, so. how does
I
one-
would say
how
if,
does one
if you have a
determine?
flyer, if you see a flyer that is concerning, that impacts any of the three groups that we referenced, to just make us aware. So I have heard, people use the terminology interchangeably and sometimes not recognizing it's two different things. So VBEA is registered as Virginia Beach Education Association, but I've even heard, members indicate it's a union. So they would have to be classified as a union. As far as we know currently, they are an association. But just like with anything, if there is a flyer or something that comes to your attention that is concerning, absolutely send it to us. If I received it, I would consult with Ms. Linetti. If she received it, we could check to see what their status is, because as an association, they too would have to be registered, because in order to collect dues and all, there's a process that they would have to go through. And so we can always validate that.
Yeah, right. Well, and I've heard a past president, a recently past president also make an announcement and say union. And so that's kind of interesting.
So if that be the case, if my colleagues are saying that they're saying it's union, I would like to see the facts, not allege that that's happening, because that's not what we want to happen. If they're a union, let's prove it. Let's bring up the facts instead of going around and around with it, because it bring about a lot of dissension within the association. I do know the VBA is part of a long time passed over teachers association that was back in the day. Some of those retirees are still around. Some of those retirees are in the VBA. So I would say to my colleagues or whoever else is listening, if you have evidence, if you have facts, we need those here so that we can talk about it and make sure that they're following criteria of unions. I do know that we are a right to work state, and unions are not readily accepted here. I heard a rumor that the police department is a union. That's just what I heard. To go in and find out, I would have to do my searching and find out as well, not just walk around and allegedly say it. So I would say to my colleagues and whoever's listening that have the facts, can bring that in and let us see it, because we are not only here to serve the students, but we're here to serve our staff as well. And we need to get that squared away and done.
Yeah, so. if
What
we-
make it a
Well, that's
union?
why I was,
Yeah, so that's why he
Yeah,
wants
we'll
to
make
make
it a
sure
union.
that factually, that, I mean, is that something that you can, because I'm.
We don't
I mean,
have
the
a
president
procedure
of the
to check
VBA
at it.
has
I've-
said
I've
the
had
past
noth-
president.
The groups that I'm aware of have the title association, so I have not had any reason to be concerned that they don't meet the criteria. So nothing's been brought to my attention that they aren't an association. So right now, they appear to meet the criteria that was defined here. If you would want to, we'd have to go back and explore where we want to define what you do or don't to recognize or allow the privileges that are set forth in this policy. Right now, the ones that I'm aware of all have the title association, so that's.
Well, I agree with Ms. Felton, we need to just get the facts, and so would you just make sure that next time that you come with the facts of they are following whatever bylaws or whatever they do to be an association?
So you want me to check out the three groups that Ms. Woodhouse named and
I
determine
think,
with the
is that what
association?
you're asking for for clarification, so that we're not just saying we
Spinning.
hear things, but that it's factual, like, I agree with Ms. Felton on that. Okay, okay, so that's B. Anything else with, A or B? So we're gonna check out, okay. Use of school facilities, C.
where are you at?
C.
Oh, okay, yeah. I don't have too much on that until 2.
Okay, so basically this is saying before or after the established work days, okay. So number 2, you had something, Mr. Bonesmith?
So it's, number 2, I have here where, and I think it's C. The meeting is not held during the regular work hours of the facility being used. So would that be, the work hours would be considered when teachers are getting paid, like contractual hours?
I would assume it's whenever the principal's designated, they need to be in the building. It may be, they could be in the building for meetings at night, not the normal set hours where the kids are there, so it's whenever they're designated to be in the building, I would
I
assume.
was just curious, because I know there was a new teachers orientation, and that they were being paid while they were doing the orientation. But there was an employee association that was speaking during that time, so would that be acceptable?
This says they can't confer with members on school premises before hours on that. I don't know who approved them or what it was they were speaking at, because it's not a meeting I go to. But this C1 is when they're meeting individually with their members, so that has to be before or after their work hours.
So I think what Mr. Bowenstill is referencing is that we have new employee orientation, and VBEA has been allowed in the past to have a table at the event. They have not been holding a meeting They were making materials available, similarly as we've had with some contractors. We have limited, access to those meetings, but VBA has had a table, in the past. Unless I'm misreading this, and you can clarify for me, I here it said hold meetings, and they were not holding a meeting, but they were present at the event. So I think that's what you're referring to, Mr. Bowen Steele?
That's partially, but, what would constitute a meeting if they're speaking in front of them? If they're actually doing the speaking?
Oh, okay, so I know they
Because
had
that was
a
my
table.
understanding that they spoke
Right,
during this
and
thing.
they did,
So that's where I'm just
absolutely.
raising a concern.
And that will be discontinued. So that has been a practice that we've had, and I think because there had not been a concern ever brought up and no one ever referenced a concern, with the policy. So, in attending the meeting last year, I do know the VBEA president, brought greetings on behalf of the, VBEA and shared a little bit about their organization. I don't know if that's considered a formalized meeting, but it sounds to me like it was concerning, meaning why you brought it up. So I think, some further guidance right here can be given, in terms of, as we review this policy.
Well, help me to understand this and B, and I hear my colleagues talking, I just need some clarification. Under the, right to form or join, et cetera, B says, an employee association is defined as an organization comprised of and organized by only employees or retirees of Virginia Beach City Public Schools. Is this not what a part of the VBA is? There are retired teachers, there are teachers, they are in this, and I mean, we don't have a representative from VBA to speak on their behalf, so you're speaking. I'm just trying to understand, where is the rift or the misunderstanding about the VBA? What is the concern about it? If it is retired teachers and teachers only in this organization, explain that.
I think the way I'm reading the policy is if they're doing their business and we're paying the teachers to work, they should be doing BBCPS business. Or like in a Belton Association, you either take leave or you can do it after. You can set your meeting at 4:00 in the afternoon when the students have left for the day. That's appears to be what the policy is getting to. But it says you should not take them away from their paid duties to be doing association business if they're supposed to be doing BBCPS business. So this seems to suggest that they're gonna hold meetings and all they need to schedule at the principal and it's outside of the work hours.
So I think, Ms. Felton, the concern shared by Mr. Bowen still is that it says you can only meet, and number two, on school premises with a written request, and, the meetings are not to be held during the regular work hours.
Okay.
So the concern is maybe that's not being followed, that's what I'm hearing.
Okay. So, so my understanding, so we are not trying to deem or insinuate that VBA is a union. What we're trying to set is to set the criteria of what they can and cannot do for employee hours. Is that where we're
I
going?
mean, it's
Yeah.
not just them, it's
No,
just
it's all,
to,
it's any group.
But
down the road too.
But VBA was called, that's what I'm using.
Yeah, but that was.
You called that
Because they
out.
were here.
Right, so you called,
But it's not just that I'm focusing on them, I'm focusing on
Any-
if they can do it, then other people are gonna do
well,
it, and then
that
down the
wasn't
road.
what was explained to me at first that way.
Well, that was part of it, but I'm
Okay.
just saying,
So
it's
what
not
we,
just, I'm not like attacking them, so to speak.
no,
I'm attacking-
I don't think you're, we're all on the same page because we're trying to figure out the criteria of what we can and cannot do. Whether it be VBA or, SRA, when I come in my group, my SRA, what the criteria are. And if I'm not mistaken, Ms. Woodhouse, I heard you say that is no longer done. That's not accepted. VBA don't carry on business that way with the new hires.
Well, I was addressing Mr. Bowenstill's question. He indicated that, that occurred last year at the, orientation, the new employee orientation that we have. And I, affirmed that was correct because I was in attendance, at the event. So I was explaining that although it was not a formal meeting, they had a table. Once you bring greetings and talk about the association, then that becomes what Mr. Bowenstill indicated, which would be a violation under number 2, because it is a paid event where staff are being paid for professional learning at that time. So I wasn't, all I was doing was addressing the concern that he brought forward, which was accurate, because I too was at the meeting, so I knew exactly what he was referencing, whereas Miss Linetti wouldn't have, because she doesn't attend those. So she is saying, the rule has always been that if VBA wishes, or any organization wishes to have a meeting, that it must be done before or after contract or hours, and that has always been the process.
And that's what the policy says. So
Absolute-
it might be
yes.
just that the policy is written, but maybe we just gotta make sure it's followed, is what I'm. I mean,
Yeah,
do you
then-
have any suggestions, Mr. Bowenstiel, about how to make this more clear, or Ms. Felton? Because it says, a written request for the use of school premises, 24 hours in advance, and the meeting is not to be held during regular work hours of the facility. No. Or does there need to be?
A microphone, sorry.
I'm sorry. Does there need to be any clarification in that paragraph, since there seems to be some concern? Or do you have any suggestions, or
Not at this point.
not at this point, but maybe just kind of
But-
like put a big question mark there?
And Ms. Linetti, maybe you could clarify this, because I can easily hear someone saying it was not a meeting. Typically with a meeting, you have an agenda, you've established that it's a formalized meeting, there's Robin rules that apply. And whether this was considered a meeting or a greeting, or, so I do think there may need to be some clarification, because this has been occurring for a very long time. So
I
it's not
think
like
that-
last year was an
Association
anomaly.
business?
Well,
Would
I
that
think
be more
that's what I've
clarifying,
heard, when I've heard,
association
because
business?
I have heard this complaint. Under section C, it said employee associations are authorized to use school facilities for association business as set forth below. So the reading is, this is when you can use it, these are our conditions for using it. What I remember being the concern, which got my attention, was that they were recruiting members, explaining the benefit of the organization, and people were interpreting that as association business while we had staff that were during work hours. Now, had they been at, an unscheduled lunch afterwards, or at a table that they could go to, I don't think that would have been quite the same situation. What I remember hearing was that they were using work hours, that employees were paid to be there, and they were then hearing about the biz and why they should join the organization. That's what I heard. But again, I wasn't there, so I can't speak to
Yeah.
exactly what they said.
Like I said, I don't have total proof on that. That's why I didn't really say much, but that was my understanding.
So maybe,
Miss Woodhouse was there, maybe,
Yeah.
I mean, was my understanding, that they were endorsing or looking for membership or giving.
but I
I'm
get,
just saying, that's
yeah.
just what I
yeah,
had heard. I'm not, that's why I really didn't bring too much of that part up. I was just saying what any organization could actually do, not just this one,
right, was
at
some,
these,
yeah.
during school hours.
So maybe we could clarify this when you take it back, Cammy, to clarify and put, association, because they're all three called associations, association business / meeting, or some
You
kind
want a
of
definition for what that
clarification.
means?
A definition of, because I agree with your,
Okay.
what is a meeting? Yeah. Okay, so we'll work on that. Cammy will work on that. Number 3, anything else on number 2?
I'm good.
Anything else for number 2? Okay, number 3,
3 or 2.
Yeah,
Yes.
bulletin
I will say this policy is a bit dated because you'll see
Yeah, bulletin
mailbox,
boards.
you don't see anything about emails and current ways that
Yeah.
this is a very old policy,
So
so
I
it's a little
think that
dated.
that whole
just
paragraph needs to be updated. Or,
I'm assuming we still have bulletin boards because we have to
Yeah,
be
we do.
posted notices. I don't know the rules on this, but yeah, this,
but
But I think this had occurred before social media and all the other platforms, so, I mean, it
AI.
seems to me it's a little outdated.
yeah, or any kind of newsletter. I mean, I
Or
don't
just
know what
maybe-
it all would entail. Newsletters.
I will say in
yeah.
schools, I'm assuming bulletin boards are still used. It's not the primary form of communication we have, but I'm assuming we still have them for student stuff otherwise. So I think this is basically, I'm gonna call it the teacher lounge, bulletin board is what I think it is. So I think it's probably still used, but it's not, I'm sure, the primary way they communicate.
Okay, so maybe an update on 3 a little bit with like modern day
Right. What we
forms of
doing,
communication.
Yep.
That, to include also, because I do know that they put things up in the teachers' areas, yeah.
We have certain required posters, like OSHA posters, EOC posters. You'll see them in our lounge out here. We do have to post posters, and I'm assuming that's what we have there.
Okay. All right, for, distribution of information, done by a member of the employee association and not by staff, and only occurs before the beginning or after the school day. I mean, that's pretty clear, and hopefully it's being followed. I mean,
So, teachers see how mailboxes and,
yeah.
I was just looking at, everything is so updated, everything come on the computer and technology, so they still get it. All right.
I mean, I would think, I mean, that's a good point. I would think that this would also maybe add, like, I would think like a principal shouldn't be going in there and doing work for the principal association during school time and emailing every principal in the city, am I correct to? So that should probably be also updated for other forms of communication.
Yeah, I will say there's no reference to email. And
Right, so.
that's how old this policy
yeah,
is.
This one needs a lot of updating.
Real dated.
Okay, so update number 4. Okay, 5. Public address system to announce the date, time, and place of association meetings, provided that this does not occur during the instructional part of the day. Any comments on that?
I
But-
do, but I think I'm gonna hold it for the next time.
Yeah, and I think maybe a little updating and tweaking it maybe, because when I think about how we now make announcements, it can hold how we do things, how we communicate now electronically. I'm just
Well, I will say I have heard Mrs. Woodhouse on the public address system at the holidays here. So apparently we do have one in this building.
Oh,
so.
really? We'll keep it then.
Okay, okay, and I don't know where this would fit in this, but I had I was just reaching out to one of our employees, something they sent, and I reached out and I was asking why they sent it, and then they said, well, I didn't really send it. And I said, yes, you did. Yes, you did. And they said, well, the representative from an association was in the teacher's lounge during lunch and had a barcode and snacks and candy, and we were all talking, and they had us take pictures of the barcode to send in this response. That just seems like that was interesting to me. So can someone from one of these 3 associations go in at lunchtime and start talking association business and start getting different teachers to take pictures of stuff and send it to us?
I think if you were one-on-one, you would look under C1 which says with the prior approval of principal, an employee association representative may confer with an individual association member on school premises either before or after their established work hours. So if
It
they
should
were
be before or after.
Yeah, if they were talking one-on-one to a person, if they were having a meeting, that's probably C2.
Well, no, yeah, I couldn't really tell. She just said in the teacher at lunch, but it was during lunch. So, but it needs to be before or after school. Is what this policy says, unless we want to change it.
If they were talking one-on-one with them, that's C1, and so that's before or after.
Okay.
if they're holding some kind of meeting, that's C2, and they gotta
Right,
follow those
okay.
procedures.
Okay. All right.
Where are we at? D?
Okay. D,
Right.
additional services.
Well, Attorney Lynette has already addressed
Yeah.
D1, so.
Yeah, we'll take out
Yeah, we'll
D1
have
because
to-
you have a policy on it. D2 is, and you'll see the next policy is, but D2 is an employee association may have the dues of its members deducted from such members' payroll, provided they provided authorization to the administration to have this dues deductive. So this is newer than some of the other rest of the policy. Again, you'll see the next policy, which is 436 on payroll deductions. But this is what authorizes the employee associations to have it. And this is, you saw what you did last night, because annually, by law, annually, by your regulations and policy, you have to approve the deductions that are allowable every year. So that's what you did last night. And there's a list of the employee deductions. This is the policies that says you will allow employee associations to be included in the payroll deductions.
Okay.
Okay.
Do we have any
Yes.
comments on that, Mr. Bowensteel?
At the very bottom of 2, it says the deduction of dues shall be conducted by the administration, provided the employee association reimburse the school division for the actual cost to provide the service. Is there any way that we can find out how much we've received over the last 5 years from these services?
Reimbursements, for the reimbursement?
Yeah,
This came up a number of years ago when Farrell Honsaker was the chief financial officer, and that question was asked to him. And what I remember him saying at the time to the school board was that because the procedures had changed on how they did this, a lot of it's done electronically anymore, that it wasn't a significant cost, so he wasn't tracking and they weren't charging. That's just what I remember from years ago. I don't know if we currently have any way to track what it costs them to verify who is getting a payroll deduction. That would have
Right.
to be payroll speaking to that.
Okay. Crystal, do you have would you know anything about that?
I would say that that still holds true, because we do what's called add-ins, so they get a file and are able to add that in. It's a very quick, probably process, that there's no way that we track this to that specific cost for part of the entire payroll process. There's just no way to do that.
Do you have I'm hearing that it's very minimal. Is that an accurate?
It's very,
I mean,
it would
like,
have to
do
be
you have a
very
ballpark
minimal,
figure?
because I think my understanding, at least on one, sometimes if at new education orientation, they're able to fill out paper, if they don't have a WISE ID. And then otherwise, they're able to actually go into WISE, if they do have a WISE ID, and actually pick their own deduction.
Right.
And so that's very electronic. The paper's a little more manual, but can't imagine that it's a very costly thing that we need to.
okay. Isn't it staff time that is doing the work?
It is. Usually it's probably the supervisor of payroll that's doing that work.
Uh-huh.
I mean,
Okay.
the most you could do would try to get an estimate of what that work, what that time frame was for her to process the paper. I'm pretty sure that if it's done through WISE, it's electronic. But if she's processing paper, you probably could guess that and then look at her salary and,
Okay, I was
yeah.
just curious.
But we just don't really, not that I'm aware of that we've ever done that
All right.
recently.
But with WISE as well, Mrs. Pace, like I wanted to change my tax deduction, I can go and do that myself, right?
Yes.
So would that be the same thing for an employee want to do deductions
Ye-
with?
Yes, but they need to obviously they have to have a WISE ID. So
Right.
my understanding is if it's at the new educators orientation where they've not been assigned a WISE ID, they are allowed to complete paper for some
Right.
things.
Okay, so that interaction, they are doing, it sounds like they are doing the work, basically, doing the paperwork and going inside of the system and placing it in themselves.
And then I think it gets brought up to payroll.
Okay. Will this new system that we are getting, will that incorporate all this as well? Will that be, it will? It'll be
Yes. We hope.
seamless?
That's the plan.
Okay.
Yes.
You gotta get the bugs out, it's gonna take about 3 years to get the bugs out.
Hopefully not that long, please.
So what I'm understanding you is if it's done, it's not that much time consuming, it's all electronic?
Yeah.
Okay.
And we do this for, like, we do automatic deductions for him.
Whomever, like,
Like-
yeah, I mean, I think as when you see the payroll deductions, some are automatic depending on what they are, but some probably are done that people choose things. I think if you do United Way, that then they can go in and say, I'm doing United Way, and maybe I wanted to go to the Virginia Beach Education Foundation, so
Okay,
that's where I want.
So we do it for individuals to choose, and then we're doing it for associations.
Mhm.
Okay, but you don't really know
Yes,
how
United
much.
Way though is a full campaign, so that.
You
I
have
was
an
about to
MOU,
say,
and I will tell
yeah.
you how long ago that was. I was a Norfolk City
Right.
attorney, so that was over 30 years ago. Where you entered in, it's called the Combined Campaign. There's an MOU you have with the surrounding cities to do the United Way. So it's a charitable program, but you're committed under that MOU for that. Charitable deductions, and you participate in that. The only other thing similar to that is Virginia Beach Education Foundation, which you can choose to make a charitable donation to that. That's the only thing that's similar. Almost everything else, and I want to say there's about 27 on the list. They're all things like your benefits pulling out, your VRS pulling out, your life insurance, any legal things you have, garnishments that you would have that would require court orders, workers' compensation, all your leave programs, all those are authorized deductions on there. There really aren't any of the things that's association. You do have something that's association, it includes professional associations. Right now you have 3 that you've authorized.
So to understand what you said, Attorney Leonetti, those legal things like garnishment, child care, those things, that's,
There are laws that require that.
I know laws require that. So you will go in and do that, or would you would go and implement it? in the
Well,
system as well?
actually, payroll has to deal with a lot of garnishment.
Right.
They'll get the legal orders coming
And
in, and they handle a lot of that. Now, like if I'm choosing to be in the deferred comp, so I click on, I want this much taken out. I choose to be a VRS life insurance. Not everybody does that, but that's an option for me to have it taken out of my paycheck to do that. So those are benefits that the school division offers, and I have the option of taking them out of my paycheck.
And I guess what I'm trying to hear from you, or what I'm trying to say is, those legal things, you all go in, you have to do it initially, but anything else outside of that, the employee has, the overall way, if they have the WISE ID, they can go in and do it, or they can adjust it that way. Is that what I'm hearing, Ms. Pace? I mean, that doesn't come out, we don't have to have a staff to sit on the side
So I
doing
think
that.
I think it's similar. Like sometimes when you do the deferred comp and stuff, there's programs that are in place that are built in that will automatically go out and do that. But it's monitored obviously by payroll staff to make sure nothing looks crazy. But it's all monitored by staff to make sure things are going like they're going. It's just that they're able, once they have a WISE ID, they're able to go into their employee self-service and choose their deductions.
Right.
But there's even work that goes around the garnishments and the child support and all that by staff as well.
The only hang up I have about WISE and going in, if you don't visit it within 90 days, they throw you out. I mean, not WISE, my other one that throws me out and I have to go back in and adjust it. Is that not true? No?
Not on Wise.
Okay.
Not
Maybe
on
it's
Wise.
my other app I'm confused about.
There are some, but I can't think of
I
what.
know, right?
Yeah.
Thank you, Ms. Page. Get you all caught up in that. Thank you so much. I appreciate the explanation.
So we're gonna basically bring this back,
Okay, yes, so,
and we just go sit down.
We have to bring it back anyway because we have to pull these things in. Also because as I'm learning website accessibility, I can see we have to restructure some of this to make it look the way we have to have in the website. So we have to fix that anyway. So we can take a look at some of these areas. Like I can add emails back in for you. And like I said, we will probably be pulling out, well, I know we'll definitely be pulling out D1 because there's no reason to have that in both places. Debate about whether we take out employee associations, but there is, you'll see the next one. I might leave it here because this is authorizing, this is what the school boards authorized them to be one of the deductions that happens under the next policy you'll be looking at.
okay, so Mr. Bonesteel and Ms. Felton, so we are all in agreement to bring back.
And that will come back at your
policy
next meeting.
4-32, and with some updates and changes, and if if we have any changes that we're thinking of.
Right.
We're
Submit
to
them.
submit them,
Okay.
okay, submit them. so
Yeah, and
that-
because of the change in the law, and we have to bring back the
Yes.
other policy to mirror it, we would take this one out. So this will be coming back the next meeting you have.
Okay,
I agree.
and, how about,
Go ahead.
go ahead,
No, you're talking.
at 436, is that what
That's
you're
the
saying it's
next
coming back
one
to,
on
or-
payroll deductions. So
Okay.
again, 432 is coming back to you anyway, so.
Right.
So we're just gonna do 436 at the next meeting?
Well, yes, I mean, you can if there's anything you want to talk about it before now and then. And this, part of the reason is because the law changed in the early 2000s to make it very clear that people just can't take stuff out of your paychecks. There's a law to this. So this is 436 is payroll deductions, and this is how it currently reads. No deduction shall be made from the salary of any employee except for such purposes as required by law or specifically approved by the school board. Deductions other than those required by law shall be made only on the approval of the school board and at the written request of the individual desiring such deduction. No such approval for any deduction shall be granted which does not offer advantages or opportunities which are open and available to all employees. So there is a law that says people can't take it out of your paycheck unless it's legal, so that's why you have tax liens and garnishments and things like that. But you do have to authorize as an employee for us to remove the other deductions. And then there's also another law that says you have to approve as a school board annually what deductions you're gonna authorize, and that's what you did last night, you ran in one. This also says the employee says, yes, you have to, I want this taken out. The employee firmly has to do that, so we can't just go take things out of your paycheck.
Does the employee have to do that annually for like associations? Or do they just do it? Does an individual employee have to?
I don't believe they do it annually. I think, once you sign up, I think it gets to continue to take out but you can go in and you always should have the right to discontinue a voluntary, choice of a deduction or payroll deduction.
Okay, do we want to just bring this one back since it kind of piggybacks the other one? Does that make sense?
Right.
To Mr. Bowensteel and Ms. Felton?
Yeah, we can, because one thing about it, I would like to see a little bit more
Yeah.
Yeah. I
in
wanna
this
see how the other
policy
one
as
gets written
well,
out too.
Right.
expansion with this payroll deduction.
Yeah, this is not one where it turned out none of the laws actually ended up changing it this year, so I don't have to do a massive rewrite to this one.
Okay.
I saw one of those cases.
Okay, so we're gonna bring back these next two policies for, further review with some changes. And again, my colleagues, please submit those, changes.
Definitely.
Okay.
Now, Ms. Williams, we talked about the fact that one of the procedures you want us to change is to print off all the policies. So I'm gonna have, Ms. Cleveland go ahead and click those right now so that she can go print them. I'm gonna put Laura Beth in charge of taking notes in the meantime. One of the things we did talk about, it's necessary if we can, since we happen to know that you all are going to be the same committee on July 1, maybe you want to go ahead and start looking at some dates for meetings, particularly since right now, we don't know if everything's scheduled for July, and you only have we had the retreat, the 2 days together in July. We don't have a second meeting, school board meeting in July, and then August. So if you want to go ahead and look at your calendars, we can start working on sketching out some dates for us.
Okay, I did look at the last few policy review chairs. They did not meet in July, and we had not had a meeting in July. So is that okay if we don't meet in July? I know you really want to.
I'm for it.
Is that
think we
okay?
need to-
I
I think
mean,
we
as
need to
far
take a
as,
break before school starts.
Staff and stress, work done, do you think that's reasonable to meet in August? Okay.
Right, we just, and I will tell you, we're looking, because the General Assembly was so late this year and there were so many changes, we are going through a lot of the bills right now to see where we need to make changes in policy. So you may see a significant amount of new ones added in just because of the General Assembly changes that are coming through. So we're working through that right now. And then we have some of the other ones that have been left over sitting out there for a little while.
Okay.
And you're coming to the end of the meeting, I'd just like to, chair for future exploration, I'd like to, let's Ms. Linetti can hit on it now, about campaigning materials within our schools. And school board members, if you can hit on that, or would you need us to bring that back?
We do have policies on, and we actually, interesting, a number of years ago, we created
It is now.
a a booklet where we put together all the rules, and I had been speaking to Ms. Manson a couple weeks ago that we need to pull it back out again, so we're trying to make it ADA compliant, which some of us are learning those procedures. Because as the campaigns are coming out, what we normally do is send it out to the candidates so they're aware of what the rules, they don't know what our rules are. We limit our employees cannot be doing campaign issues in schools. We limit candidates from coming in, what they can do with campaign duties. Obviously, we don't. Our students are required to be there, our employees are required to be there, so we do have limitations on what campaigning can happen in schools. Our employees can't wear election campaigning type of things on, and there is a definition, and I have to hold the policy definition of what counts as campaigning on there. So we do limit that. Now, if a student is working within a student association, they have some First Amendment rights on there, but we don't allow campaigning while our students are in their education hours or while our employees are there. But we do have political groups who can use the facilities in the after hours and the weekends that can do that.
And the reason why I bring this up is because I know this was a concern maybe 4 years ago concerning campaigning, but I received a few calls from Lockford and some of the parents about campaigning, our colleagues campaigning. And I just need for us to understand, and if you could do more deliberation on that or explanation on that or get that information. I believe I remember getting some information from you when I was campaigning and running, telling us because of that, we had people going in, crossing the line about campaigning. And we just need to let that know. We need to let our teachers know and the community know as well. Not just our colleagues, but the community know as well what is allowed and what's not is allowed in the schools.
Yeah, our regulation is in personnel section, political activities 423.3. I'm happy to read it if you want, but it does list out what is prohibited type of activities in there and the use of it. And the specific definition of political activities under this regulation that are prohibited is narrowly defined to mean political, election, or campaign activities, which would include but are not limited to the posting of political circulars or petitions, campaigning for any local, state, or federal elected or appointed position, collection and or solicitation of campaign funds, solicitations of campaign workers, the use of students or staff in writing or addressing campaign materials, the use of school board property resources, including email, audio, announcement system, web-based, or other electronic media or other communication or computer systems, or the distribution of election or campaign materials to students or staff on school property or during school time in any manner which would indicate the school employee is using the employee's position with the school division to further personal views on candidates for public office or on any questions of public policy. Exception is the circulation of literature pertaining to bond referendum for school purposes. And then there's some guidance to teachers on how they address political issues in the school setting with students. And there are, obviously we have activities where students are learning about politics, so that deals with that. We've limited down, but we do have rules that we talk to them about voting and signing our 18-year-olds up for voting procedures. But this particular regulation limits what we can do, and this applies to employees.
Are you requesting that I be on the agenda, or do you want Ms. Linetti to send that out? What's your request?
I
Ms.?
do.
Okay.
What is
to review
appropriate.
the policy, to review, so.
We'll do that. We'll bring you the updated campaign activity, political activities
And what
booklet that we
policy
have.
is that again? What was the number?
It's 423.3. It's a regulation.
Okay, it's a regulation.
So this,
we
because it's in section 4, it applies to employees.
Okay, so what policy is it under?
I was gonna say, I have the updated regulation, or I'm sorry, the updated politicals activity booklet. We're just trying to make it ADA compliant so we can put it online. I can send that to you all and it will lay out
Okay.
I think there's one policy and multiple regulations that it lays out.
Great.
Its overall policy is 423, which is conflict of interest. And so conflict of interest has regulations. One is conflict of interest regulation 423.1. There's 423.2, which is endorsement of commercial products or services. 423.3 is political activities. And 423.4 is non-school employment.
So, Ms. Linetti, just for an example, so you're telling me when I was campaigning, on the back of my shirt I had a QR code, and on the back was just scan me, but I had my name on it. So I was going into the school and I thought about it and I ran back to the car and put a coat on. So if I had walked into school with that, because I was picking up my grandson, had my name and had my QR code. So is that a conflict of interest? You're telling me that's a conflict of interest. I can't do that.
This applies to employees, and you all in the unique position of being a school board member. So if you would like to conduct yourself as employees, but I'm not sure which one of us who are your employees are going to tell you that you can't do it. But we would not allow an employee to do that coming in.
So we school board members, so we should lead by example? Is what
I
you're
think
saying?
you need to speak to yourselves as to how you should conduct yourselves, but
Well, and then
employees
we-
would not be
but
allowed
we
to do
can-
that.
We can wear name tags, obviously, that have nothing to do with an election, but just has your name on it. So that's obviously,
But
we
that
have
go,
name tags, yeah.
that go along with the official name tag we have as well. We have to have those walking into school, correct?
Yeah, I have mine on my arm.
Yeah.
I don't wear it. I have it on my arm.
Have it on. We have to,
Yep.
we have to have it walking into the
Yep,
school,
always.
correct?
All right, so if you could get that to us, Elby, that would be great.
Thank you so
Okay,
much.
and, okay, so next meetings, let's look at our August. August, do we still wanna stay on Wednesdays? Okay.
Be the best.
So when do you think would be best, Cammie, for you to get all the information that you need to get from the state and all the policies and stuff, and LB, should we look at the 19th or the 26th, like toward the end?
I'd like to get some of them onto the school board agenda as soon as possible. So if we could time it to get it done, so we could get information at the next school board meeting.
School starts the 20, is it the 24th?
Six? No. Yeah, 24?
Yeah.
We should meet before school starts, right?
How about the 19th, August 19th?
Yeah, it looks like you have school board meeting the 11th and the 25th, if I'm correct.
Yeah, 11 and the 25th and then school, August 19th?
That works for me, for us to myself.
What time would you start this? Because BC, are we usually done by 3:30?
Hopefully
Uh,
not later than 3 or 3:30.
Yeah, I would.
Yeah.
Because I'm
It
back
depends
in,
on who's
yeah,
talking.
I'm back in school, so it would have to be 3:30. Going back to 3:30.
We have Benefits Executive Committee. It's obviously taken on a lot of work, and we will be doing more work looking at the plan. So our meetings are getting longer. So a lot of us have to be at those meetings. So the later you could start, it would give us more time. Benefits Executive usually starts about 1:00, and we're running to about 3. So the later you can go would be helpful for us.
Is can we do 4:00 on that Wednesday, the 19th?
I can,
I can do,
if that's best.
or would you rather do another Wednesday that you don't have that meeting?
Yeah, maybe the week before.
Yeah, I was about to say, based on what Cammie was saying and based on
Yeah.
all these policies that, the legislative committee is about to meet on, it could be a long agenda, or we need to probably slice it if we're starting at 4 PM, because we have staff who are, committed to getting off at 5.
Yeah, if we can do the 12th, then we
Okay.
could start a
I
little
can do
bit earlier.
I can do the 12th at any time.
What time?
1:30, what's good for you? What's good for you, 1:30?
What time can you meet?
I can do one.
1 o'clock
1 o'clock?
on August 12th.
Okay. I'm changing that now.
So that's gonna be what, a 3-hour meeting?
That sounds like a long
Oh my
one.
God, yeah.
August 12th at 1 o'clock.
Got you. PR.
Would put us at September 9. Is that that's not
And
the first week
then-
of school, is it September 9? Okay.
Yeah, then we would be looking at September 16th. Does that work for everybody?
But that we've got a BEC meeting again on the 16th. I've got it at least tentatively on my schedule. So maybe the 9th?
The 9th,
I can do the 9th.
September 9th, Mr. Bonesteel.
I didn't ask, I don't know if did any of your discipline committee meetings or committees change?
True. No, mine's the same. Third Wednesday. Third Wednesday of the
Third
month.
Wednesday.
So you wouldn't want the 23rd, so then yeah, 9 probably works better.
What do you have, discipline?
Okay, so September 9th at 3:30.
Is that a third Wednesday? No? I I can't see.
No, the 23rd would, if that's your discipline committee, that's the third Wednesday.
So we can either do September 9th or September 23rd. September 9th at 3:30. Let's just wait those two. Okay. Okay, those two. Anything else?
Thank you.
All right, so
Just
I
wanted
was
to
gonna
hand
do it
them to you.
afterwards,
Okay.
but is that okay?
6.